Hi, Meera. Thank you so much for joining us on The Road Less Traveled, the new series that Game has started with your story in Network Capital. And I'm really happy to have you here today because I feel you represent someone who has done interesting things, not necessarily followed the beaten path. And that's the idea of the series, of conversations with people who've done interesting things and broken away from the mold. So thank you for joining us. I'd like to start with my first question, Meera. Most people in India, at least, don't grow up thinking or wanting to be entrepreneurs. Most of us want the safety of a job because that's almost the common narrative. What was that point? I'd like to go to that point when you said you wanted to set up on your own and be an entrepreneur.
First off, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. Uh, to address your question, yes, it is true. Most people don't typically think of starting up or, taking the risk of running a business, right? And I didn't too. I really didn't imagine myself running a business. But throughout my childhood and later, I would daydream of doing things. It could be something like starting a school or setting up a museum. I just had these ideas, dime a dozen, and I would just imagine, doing stuff about them, and actually making them happen. And that's kind of what led to this in some ways. Around 2005, 2006, 2007, right? Bangalore was really growing by leaps and bounds, and it had been a much smaller city, more peaceful, laid back, green kind of city. And all these, the IT boom happened, and all these developments were happening, and flyovers were getting constructed. A lot of changes in the city. It was looking like a city in progress forever, right? Every project has started but never completed. And at that point, I started asking these questions of why these projects are going on, how long would they take, who are the contractors, when would it end, what is the process of getting such projects approved, what are the alternatives the government considered, and so on, right? A lot of questions to understand what's going on in the city and why it was so broken, right from your drains to these underpass and flyover projects, road widening, lack of drinking water supply. All of this were questions I started having, and I did not really find a place which provided these answers. And that was a starting point, and that's when I realized that, you need local media. And this is something I'd seen elsewhere in the world. Local media is generally very robust and strong, and that leads to a very engaged community. Um, and this is something that it looked like that was missing in Bangalore. It was just this, city that's growing so big that it was like a country, right? That time it was about 6 million, and we'd compare it to, I don't know, a Belgium or something, right? And a city which is that big needs its own media, right? Because it has issues are complex, narratives had to be nuanced. It's not just things are not just black and white. You need to understand, take the time to build your perspective, look at the data behind these topics. So that's when we felt a local media was something that's very, very essential to making sense of this and figuring out why things are broken and how things can be fixed. So we started Citizen Matters as my co-founder and I. We started it as a local news magazine for Bangalore. So that was a starting point, because I had all these different ideas and, of doing things, but this particular question, actually seeing things on the ground, led to a media initiative. Yeah.
And you're at that point, you identify a gap, you find the idea, and you set up Citizen Matters. But
Yeah.
there's always initial challenges. I mean, an entrepreneurial journey has challenges along the way, but those first initial ones are so unexpected. Can you talk us through some of that, Meera, with some examples of things that happened at those early days?
Initially, I mean, of course, the typical challenges of a loss of regular, comfortable salary, and those are things that do kind of concern you initially, but it was okay because especially my son was very young, and then the flexibility when you're just setting up things, you're ideating, you're talking to people, that was quite enjoyable. So it was actually enormous fun.
My next question, Meera, really is, you've started this local media. Like you said, there's a necessity for a growing city like Bangalore. We need to address local issues with a local lens. And you've figured this, you've identified this gap. And yet every entrepreneur, when they set up, have challenges. The first 100 days, like they say, are never easy. What did you experience in those early days?
Like I mentioned, the early stages of going out, meeting people, meeting citizens, and understanding what issues that they face, understanding how the city work, right? Uh, whether it is about, like I said, about projects or governance and environment, there's a lot of learning, and that was enormous fun. Okay. And we had this, there were two, issues we were concerned with. One was about, we had this fear, do people really care about these topics, right? It's not something very fancy or sexy, right? We're talking about water and drainage and,
Absolutely. Important
planning
stuff.
committees. Yeah, they're important, but they're not really like,
Yeah,
something that people would just, they're not clickbait topics, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, so that was one concern that we were worried whether people really would care about a new media which talked really in depth about local issues, right? And and not just about writing about it, but actually getting into the depth to really look at how things can change, right? Looking at multiple aspects of it, from the planning side to the execution and so on. So that was one worry we had, and we went down and met a lot of people. We met the resident associations, we met NGOs, we met people working on the ground, a few people from the government and former government officials, to just understand how the system worked and what people's concerns were, right, in building a better city. And what we found out was that yes, people do care about these issues, and they did find this gap in terms of finding information about these issues, right? They could not uh, easily access budgets. They did not know why certain decisions were made, and so on. So that kind of got resolved in a way. We felt like people who really cared about cities were ready to receive or to accept this form of media. And the second thing was about funding. And that was a bigger challenge. We, of course, started off with putting in our own money and a few angels, friends, and family. But then we built a business plan and did the rounds of the venture capitalists, VC firms, and startup funds, and so on. And that's where we found some very specific issues. Um, Two things. One, the organizations we went and met, many of them really did not understand media, right? Media is not a, it's, the return on investments take much longer, right? Your, uh, the gestation period for a media venture is much longer than any other kind of business. That was one. So to kind of convince VCs, we had a hard time. And in spite of it, we did get to one particular organization which was quite interested, and they were willing to invest, and we kind of went through the process, went up to the term sheet. And that's when, 2008, 9, that economy did really badly. And suddenly over a few weeks, the markets tanked and all that, and then they pulled out. So that was bad luck. But in general, the experience with VCs was a little, it was interesting because of the question they asked. Some of them asked really good questions, and that kind of helped us go back and rework things and all that. That was good. But we also found many of them really didn't understand the domain itself. So that was one challenge. Also, the other thing was, in hindsight, we realized that we were at the uh, the beginning of the time when media models world over were breaking down. Right. Now everybody talks about it. There are very few sustainable models for media, and many organizations are shutting down or closing because of these challenges. But that was the beginning of that cycle, and we were just at that point, so it was just made it harder to kind of get the funding that way. And over the next few years, we realized we continued, publishing and doing work with, and we found it had a lot of impact. And that's when we realized this was more of a social venture than necessarily a for-profit, a viable startup venture. So it took us a few years to figure that out. But yeah, it was great learning, of course.
Yeah. There's no entrepreneur who's been through the journey without learning. Meera, like you said, for you, a lot of what you were going to get out of this and are getting out of it is the impact, right? The local on ground impact. Can you
Yeah.
share just a couple of examples, one or two stories of impact that, make you think this is why I'm doing it?
One was one of our earliest, stories of citizen journalism. And pretty much early on, we started having a hybrid model of having both professional journalists contribute stories as well as citizens sharing their experiences. And this was during the time when this whole issue of road widening had started. And there was one citizen story which talked about the fact that this person's house was earmarked for road widening, and she was going to lose a part of her property. And she wrote this piece called "How Wide is Wide Enough?" And she started really questioning the whole, the policy, the process, and really how do cities make these decisions to have uh, roads, where the road should be, how wide they should be, what sort of transportation systems do the cities need, and how do governments actually engage with citizens in making this happen, where there are public consultations or unilateral decisions. All of these questions where she raised that in the article. And that's when I kind of realized that citizen voice is something very, very powerful, and they can ask the right question, and it has the ability to kind of change narrative. The public discourse can be influenced by powerful citizen voices. And that was the beginning of this whole public conversation about road widening, and the cutting of trees to enable that, and the whole environment movement that kind of got strengthened in Bangalore because of that. So it was very, very interesting to see that happen. So that was one example. There was another example I can think of, which is we have another complementary initiative called Open City, where we open up public data. And in that, we had put up the master plan of the city. And there were a couple of citizens who actually looked at the master plan and found discrepancies in between the plan and what's happening on the ground. So one of them found a road which was there in the plan was actually missing on the ground. They had some houses or something else built up there. So was this an encroachment, or was a master planning wrong? A lot of questions that you can get out of that. So that's another example of how, when you put data and information in the hands of citizens, it kind of empowers them to actually ask the right questions and take that, take action onwards. And there have been many, many examples of impact that way in terms of the kind of coverage we've done about lakes, about encroachments, about the advertising billboards. Many of them have led to action, PILs. In fact, for example, if you consider the lakes, you see all these, actually, let me give you the lake as it's a good example. Let me give you the full story. So there was this writer called Usha who used to see this lake from her balcony. And one day she saw people were dumping some debris, and it didn't look like a well-kept lake or somebody was taking care of it. And she uh, was very worried about that lake, and she wrote this article, and she tried to find out something more about the lake, and she wrote this article called Kere in Crisis, to say that, hey, this is an important, I mean, this is a small lake near our community, but it is important because it's a way to, for the rainwater to recharge the ground. Uh, and it's a good place for community to, as a green space for the community. And this is getting encroached, and people are not, the government is not taking care of it, and so on. So that was the first article. And then we followed it up with a few more articles to understand what's going on with lakes in Bangalore, how many of them have been lost, what kind of challenges do they face in terms of sewage coming in, encroachment, there's a lot of, the real estate lobby and so on. And then that led to more and more citizens getting involved. And also it so happened that time the government had some budget earmarked for lakes, and the citizen groups which were involved in these lakes kind of started engaging with the government to to understand what how those budgets could be used. And that led to a couple of projects to rejuvenate two lakes. One was Puttanalli, the other one was Kaikondralli. And that was a whole the beginning of the lake rejuvenation movement in Bangalore. So from 2 lakes to 3 lakes to a dozen to now over 30 odd lakes have got rejuvenated in Bangalore, and many of them have local communities involved in as a steward to kind of facilitate and keeping an eye on the lake and maybe take care of them. Some of them raise money to support them and so on. So that's a great example of
That's
how people can
amazing.
come together. Yeah, how people can come together and have come together to make a difference to the city.
That really was a powerful story. Mira, what,
Is
looking
it
back on your
just
journey, what do you know now you wish you had known when you started, apart from the VCs? But has there been a learning and you had the opportunity to go back, that you would do differently, even in how you've structured the paper or what you cover, the focus areas? Have you learned something that you say, I wish I'd known this when I started?
there are a couple of things which I think I would have done differently. One would have been perhaps to kind of continue working a little longer to build up more savings, because it takes a long journey, takes a lot more savings to kind of
Yeah.
see you through. And also to try out the idea in an informal mode, maybe as a blog or as a minimal, to kind of create a minimum viable product initially to test out the idea. Because a lot of learnings we did, it was as we executed the initiative, right?
Yeah.
Do we have a print magazine? Should it be online only? What are the kind of stories that we run through? What worked? Long form, shorter stories, citizen journalism, all of it was, you kind of experiment as you execute. And perhaps I'm just thinking it would have been nice to do it on the side, just to understand that better, and then kind of once things are much clearer, then kind of roll it out as a full-fledged initiative, as a startup or a nonprofit. So that was one thing. And the second thing, on hindsight, I realized it was much more suited to be a social entrepreneurship initiative rather than a full-fledged for-profit business. And again, this is not just about the way we had designed, but it's also about the whole ecosystem of media as well as the industry itself. So yes, that if we had realized that it is going to be a social initiative, then obviously we would have approached it much more, much differently, and reached out more to philanthropists and foundations for support rather than investments. So yeah, that on hindsight, those were the learnings.
And those are good learnings to look back and kind of gauge. What about if you
Totally,
looked,
yeah,
what about looking,
because we did.
no, no, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, like I said, that once we realized that, we kind of did pivot into the not-profit model. We set up a trust, non-profit trust, and raise money. And we said, because there's a lot of impact on the ground, and our readers are collaborators, so to say. They are the ones who are supporting it, contributing, and they make this happen. So it's completely thanks to that model that we are continuing to survive and sustain.
And what about the future, Meera? 5 years from now, we looked back, we spoke a little bit about the current situation. Where would you like to see Citizen Matters and your own journey as an entrepreneur 5 years from now?
My vision for Citizen Matters is that every city deserves one, and I'd like to see every city have their own local chapters. We have in Bangalore, Chennai, and Bombay now, Mumbai, and it would be good to see this happen in other cities, especially the bigger ones, and as well as tier 2 cities, to have their own small local initiative to understand their issues and work collaboratively with citizens to build better cities. So that would be my vision for Citizen Matters. For myself, I'd like to see the next generation of a strong leadership in the organization, so I can move to other ideas that I have. Yeah.
So you have many more entrepreneurial journeys ahead of you.
Yeah, hopefully.
Good. Do you have an entrepreneurial icon, Meera, or icons that you say, hey, I like, it doesn't necessarily have to be in media, but it can be in media, but someone you admire that you say you think they've.
To be honest, I really don't have icons per se.
Mhm.
I look at the work that people do, how they go about it, and
Sure.
that's what inspires me. So from that perspective, I really like the work of Khan Academy, right? Sal Khan,
Mhm.
and how he initiated it, and how the imagination of opening up learning and making it more accessible to more people, that's amazing. So there are many such initiatives that I kind of admire that way, especially those there are many of these new businesses that are uh, built to solve social or environmental problems, right? For example, you have Farmizon, which is a farm to fork kind of
Yeah.
initiative to bridge the gap between agriculture and the consumer. And you have many organizations working on waste management, like Hasirudala, or Wastewise, and so on, Sahas and all that. Then you have ideas which enable inclusivity, like Mitti Cafe. So I
Yeah.
like many of these ideas. They may be small, but they're very, very impactful. So it's and how the team goes about executing it, it's quite amazing. So I look at that, the work that people do.
Both Khan Academy and Mitti Cafe are stories I really admire.
Yeah.
Uh, Meera, what has COVID meant for Citizen Matters? What are the changes that you've had to put in place to accommodate, a lockdown and a different, unexpected scenario?
See, from an organizational perspective, the way we function, it hasn't affected us too much, because we were almost virtual earlier. We used to just meet each chapter has a few of us resources in each city. And we used to meet once or twice a week. Thanks to Bangalore's traffic, like we really didn't bother to go to office every day. Um, so, and we also, distributed around India. We have an editor in Kharagpur, another one in Kannur. So it didn't affect us that way in terms of our working. But it's kind of really highlighted the fact that this work is even more important now to understand and build resilience in cities, right? You need to figure out how to fix the problems that we have, so we're not in, dealing with these kind of crises again and again. How do you fix our healthcare? How do you fix our education, that people are not struggling to even, follow, basic lessons? So these issues are, uh, clearly things that need to be resolved going forward. And this whole COVID crisis has just exacerbated the issues worse, right? Made it worse. And it kind of clear that we need to continue what we're doing and better.
This is just more personally something I'm curious about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you chase the issues, or do the issues chase you on what you want to spotlight?
The issues do chase us, but we generally try to take a step back and really ask the right questions, and dive deeper into the topic. So so we try not to get distracted by, hey, this is the breaking news, we need to cover it, this something else is happening. Then so we don't try to, we try avoiding jumping from issue to issue. So you go into one, like, you take up, let's say, governance, or you take up schooling, public schooling, and really get into looking at multiple aspects. How do you make education inclusive? What are the challenges in from a policy perspective, or in terms of budgeting, or in terms of execution on the ground? So we try to make things, cover things in a comprehensive manner.
Mm.
But yeah, there's always new topics that are coming up, and there's just so much happening in a city that yeah, we need more and more people to be looking at local issues.
I want to now just move the focus slightly to just Meera, the person, uh, because very much a part of every entrepreneurial journey. And just to keep it light, what do you do in your downtime, Meera? Do you get downtime? What do you like doing in your downtime?
um, yeah, not much of downtime nowadays, but yeah, in general, I read, of course, you can see.
Yeah.
Read a lot, and maybe a little bit of gardening and clearing the house.
You haven't given into the whole COVID lockdown favorite hobby of baking. Everybody seems to have
No.
become a baker.
No. No, I am not much of a foodie, really, to be honest. Yeah.
Is there a book
It's
you really enjoy, a favorite book that you can share with us?
there are many books. But let me. There's one book um, that I read recently, which is Bill Bryson's At Home. It kind of talks about how, actually looks inwards into how our houses came to be about. How did the origin of the kitchen or the living room and our furniture and our, the stuff we use around the house, and how that relates to us getting domesticated over the centuries, and how we deal with community. So it's quite fascinating. Yeah, that's something I read recently.
I love Bill Bryson. He's one of
Yeah.
my favorite authors. His book, A Walk in the Woods, is one of my favorite books. So I'm glad
Right.
you mentioned that. Talking about one or two traits of yours that has held you in good stead through this. A lot of people talk about perseverance and persistence, but do you recognize a trait in yourself that you feel this has been your mainstay?
One, of course, is learnability. And I really enjoy the process of learning, and kind of drives me through this whole journey. Uh, there's another one which I'm striving towards, which I do possess in some measure, though, which is equanimity, right? To kind of take things as they come, to not let success go to your head, and to not be faced by failure, and to accept that struggle will be a constant part of the journey. uh, that is very, very important, I think. Equanimity.
I think that's a great trait to have pointed out. Meera, I admire what you are doing. More power to you. Thank you so much for joining us on The Road Less Traveled.